Sports media has lost its mind. That's why Outkick exists. If you're a sports fan, check out Outkick. We are saying, like this show is saying. But even the response to this hockey player for the Philadelphia Flyers, who said because of his religious beliefs that he wasn't going to wear a Pride jersey. And then the NHL media has lost its mind. The worst of them, and I've watched all of these, and I've been blown away by them in general. The worst of them was this guy, and I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly, EJ Hradek, who is a NHL Network. He is employed literally by the league as a senior reporter to work on their NHL Network television show. Yesterday, as part of the discussion surrounding this player, Ivan Provorov, this analyst said, if you won't wear the Pride jersey, you should leave America, go back to Russia, and go fight in the Russia-Ukraine war. This was on video. We are playing the audio for you right now. This was last night on the NHL Network.
And Ivan Provorov can get on a plane any day he wants and go back to a place where he feels more comfortable, take less money, and get on with his life that way, if it's that problematic for him. And he's been in North America for a long time. He played in the Western Hockey League. He's now been in Philadelphia for many years. If this is that much of a problem for him to maybe assimilate into his group of teammates and in the community and here in this country, that's okay. Listen, you can feel any way you want. But the beauty is, if it bothers you that much, there's always a chance to leave, go back where you feel more comfortable. I understand there's a conflict of sorts going on over there. Maybe get involved.
Go fight against the Ukrainians. Go back to your home country if you won't wear the Pride jersey. Buck, this is the league's official network, their senior reporter saying, get out of the country if you won't wear a Pride jersey.
One thing that I think has become very clear, and you know this better than most, is that the journalists who cover sports and the audience that consumes sports are living on different planets most of the time. You couldn't even begin to see crossover in their ideology and beliefs, or even just a willingness to have the journalists pretend that they care what the audience believes, thinks, or feels on any of this stuff. The wokeness of sports journalism is pretty amazing. It's pretty shocking, to be honest with you. And that this guy would say something, it's just such a nasty thing to say to anybody. Yeah, go die in a war if you won't wear the jersey we want you to wear. But it goes to some underlying sentiment here. It really does.
Well, for a country, Buck, that was founded on religious liberty, to not allow someone in our country to embrace religious liberty and insist that they flee the country and go fight in a war and basically die fighting against Ukraine. I'm actually curious because for NHL fans out there, this has become a thing. Like, the NHL has decided to go super woke. Have you guys noticed it? What do you think? 800-282-2882. Buck, this is wild. And I think it's really symptomatic of something much more sick in the country.
I'm trying to think of when last time I watched a hockey game. I went to a hockey game maybe 10 years ago, and I don't even remember who was playing. A friend took me, a buddy of mine. But I haven't seen hockey in a while. At this point, I don't know much about hockey, but I do know about political agendas. And clearly the media that is covering the NHL has one. And I think increasingly this is something that you're going to see spill out into other areas of American. I mean, it already has, but it's going to be an ongoing thing, whether it's announcing your pronouns in your email signature or any number of things where you have to go along with some of the agenda of LGBTQ plus activism. This is amazing, even that I can rattle off the acronym with that speed because we hear it all the time. And they add to it, but this is how this all goes. Here's a Canadian journalist. And we just had this one NHL Network senior reporter talk about how this Russian player should go back and fight in the Russia-Ukraine war.
And let me mention this, too. The guy's been in America since he was 13 years old. And I just want everybody out there listening to think, if this were an African athlete, right? There's tons of guys who were born in Africa that play, for instance, in the NBA now. A lot of guys who play a variety of sports, in the NFL too. If that athlete had refused to wear a gay pride jersey, and this guy had come on and said, go back to Africa, he would never work in sports again. So I just want everybody out there to think, when you say go back to Russia, and by the way, fight in a war and potentially get yourself killed against Ukraine, imagine that he says, go back to Africa and fight in one of your civil wars on your war-torn continent if you won't wear a gay pride jersey. The guy would never work again. So I just want everybody out there thinking, why is it okay for him to say, go back to Russia? And also, Buck, if this guy were Muslim and he were deciding to do it, would this guy say, go back to the Middle East? We don't want your kind here in this country. If you won't wear a gay pride jersey because of your religion, go back to that backwards country in the Middle East where you came from. He would never work again either. So just because he's Russian, why should the standard of go back to your country not be applied the same way that it would if it were Asia or Africa or the Middle East? Just because he's a white Russian guy doesn't mean that his perspective is any less valid than theirs would be.
Here is a Canadian journalist who also had a meltdown because this Flyers player, Provorov, would not wear a pride jersey. Play 17.
I think you find the Flyers $1 million for this. I'm not kidding. Figure this out and stop offending people on nights where it's not about that. It's supposed to be about inclusivity. The National Hockey League need to attack this and figure this out. Because what I heard last night was offensive and didn't make any sense. Because, for instance, if that was a military night, okay?
Right. If
anyone in Canada or in the States on a military appreciation night wouldn't wear a jersey pregame, do you have any idea the uproar that would have happened on that? Do you have any idea the backlash? Do you have any idea what happened on social media? It's ridiculous what would have happened.
It was just a minute ago we were talking about the uproar that was happening with FIFA fever, where if you were seen with so much as a rainbow anywhere, you had to fear for your life, imprisonment, or death. Yeah. Seriously. So, and now here we are.
I just think the NHL has to do something here. This is not good enough. This is not good enough. Hockey is for everyone, ... unless you don't agree with gay rights, is not the phrasing of this. You're either in this or you're not. And one last point. Nothing scares me more than any human being who says, I'm not doing this because of my religious beliefs. Because when you looked at people's lives who normally say that publicly, you'd throw up at what you saw. You would throw up at what you saw. And I have seen that 1,000,000 times in a lot of different ways. So don't give me that.
I mean, first of all,
this is a sports. Let me just. I just want. This is where I started pulling my hair out when I saw this happening everywhere. But just to reiterate, this is a sports program. Like, you put this on because you're like, hey, I wonder if the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Detroit Red Wings are, and I'm not an expert in hockey, are going to be able to make a run over the next month. And you hear this. Like, it's not only that it's being said, Buck, it's that the incongruity of where you're hearing it. You're getting lectured from dudes who otherwise sit around and tell you whether a guy deserves his contract or not as a forward on a hockey team.
Yes, but this is another instance of go along with an agenda that is pushed very much by the left, or else you're a horrible person who should be fired from your job, canceled, ruined, and destroyed. And we see how much the shift has occurred here from let's all just be nice to each other, let's all be polite, let's make sure that everyone is equal under the law, to you better do what we say and celebrate what we tell you to celebrate. As I said yesterday, I don't want to be told to celebrate anything.
Yes,
like, I don't want to be told that I have to go out there and wear anything, a MAGA hat. I don't want to be told to go out there and I have to put I'm not a flag pin guy, for example. It's not because I don't love the flag and love my country. I love the flag. I love my country, but I'm just not a flag pin guy. I don't want to be told that I have to wear a flag pin. Like, you shouldn't have to wear the ribbon, as we all know from Seinfeld.
Yeah, and Buck, his analogy there, that first of all, a couple of the different things were flawed. One, if you know some of the things in the background of these people in religion, look, people who are religious are imperfect. That is why many people are religious, right? This idea that if you have any skeletons in your closet, or if you do things in your life that are not living up to the ideals of religion, you don't have any basis to embrace a religion, is fundamentally the antithesis of why many people do, in fact, embrace religion. So that's a ridiculous argument. But he then said, oh, well, he would wear a military jersey that salutes the troops. Well, that's what you do. Right? Like, the whole concept of a jersey is you wear the jersey of something that you support, right? So, like, I am a fan of the Tennessee Titans, unfortunately. I would not wear a jersey of the Houston Texans because they're a different team, right? Like, you wear the jersey of what you support. And maybe not everybody would agree with me, but I was talking about this earlier on one of our Outkick programs. Buck, there used to be a ton of Quakers in Pennsylvania, right? Like Benjamin Franklin, I believe, was a Quaker. It's a religious faith that is nonviolent in nature. I'm not sure how many Quakers there still are, but they would get religious exemptions because they refused to fight in all wars, right? If this guy, Provorov, was instead of Russian Orthodox, if he were a Quaker and he came out and said, hey, I understand militaries are important to many different people, but because I'm a Quaker, my religion doesn't allow me to support military. And he said, I'm not going to wear a military label on my jersey as a result. I can't speak for everyone, but if he explained that, I might not agree with it, but I wouldn't be like, oh, this guy has to leave the country. I'd be like, well, that's his religious beliefs. People have different religious beliefs. That's why we were founded as a country. For religious reasons.
I just want to know. So if there's a decision that's made that everyone has to in some act of solidarity with with transgender youth, you have to wear something, right? You have to, or you have to don some kind of emblem or symbol of that. A lot of people have issues with the whole notion of kids being told that they're
100%.
So do you have to go along with that, or you're horrible? By the way, the answer that Democrats and the left would give, including Biden, all the way up to the White House, is yes.
Here's what paints them into a corner that they can't answer, Buck, and this is one for all of you out there. What if the Philadelphia Flyers had decided that they wanted to have a Christian faith night and everyone had to wear a jersey that had a gigantic cross on it? They would never say, this guy who said, go back to Russia, if a player said, hey, I understand some people are Christian. I don't feel comfortable wearing a cross because my religious faiths are different. I would say, we're a multi-plural society. I understand people who are Christian. I respect that choice. This guy wouldn't say, he would actually say that the player who refused to wear the cross was a hero. He'd be like, well, this is what you have to do. You can't stand up, enforced religion would be unacceptable to him. Well, this is a religion, right? That's what people haven't realized. Wokeism is a religion, and this is a form of genuflecting before that altar is wearing this gay pride and jersey.
Oh, that's absolutely true. And it's funny, too, because he says, can you imagine if you didn't do military appreciation night? Colin Kaepernick became some kind of international, civil rights superstar, Nike, headlining multi-millionaire on top of what the NFL had already paid him, more money he'd ever made before in his life, because he did something that obviously was meant to antagonize people who support the troops and the flag, even though it was about, injustice or police or racism or whatever. We all know what it was about, okay? That's why he did it when it was the national anthem. So this notion like, oh, could you imagine? Yeah, the left would actually cheer for someone who did that, which is what they did, by the way. And we're not even talking about somebody. It's not like he went out there and tried to show some form of disrespect while this was going on. He's just like, look, I don't want to be a part of this.
Good point by Allie, our producer. If the Philadelphia Flyers came out and said, hey, we're supporting police officers, and so we've got some insignia associated with the police on it, and a player refused to wear that jersey, then this guy would praise it, right? He'd be like, oh, well, you shouldn't have to support military or police if you don't want to. That's not a part of your job. You're just a hockey player. I mean, that... And so you really paint them into a corner, and what this is really about is content-based discrimination. And that's why it's so important, I think, to fire back against these guys. So we've got a request out to both the NHL Network and to the NHL itself, because they employ this guy who said he needs to go back to Russia. Like, what's your perspective? This is your program that you put this out. You need to have an answer for whether you think this player should go back to Russia, who's been here for since he was 13 because of his religious beliefs. Some good news, by the way, if you're out there and you're saying, this is crazy, this story we're talking about where a Russian player who's been here since he was 13 years old, by the way, this is not somebody who just came over a couple of years ago, being told to go back to Russia because he refuses to wear a Pride jersey by an NHL Network employee. And you also heard basically religion being attacked by NHL media members. Ivan Provorov's jersey, his Philadelphia Flyers jersey, has now sold out online. So, Buck, one way that people are clearly expressing their admiration and support for this player's willingness to speak out is they have gone and bought up his jersey. So that news story just coming down as a result. And maybe some of you out there had thought of that idea as well. And so this is really kind of fascinating to think about.
It's amazing, Clay, to watch this continue to play out in this way, because again, I as somebody who had no familiarity with this, like I didn't watch Sports Center, I'm not an ESPN guy, to see how really I think people take opportunity, they view it as an opportunity to inject the most woke politics possible into every situation in sports, which to me is just crazy. I mean, you would think it would be such a turnoff for the audience, such a problem for them, but I guess the corporate interests that make the determinations about who gets what show and whatever in the sports world like this stuff.
I think this is also a sign. You're right, and I basically have built an entire business around this. The gap between the media who covers the sport and the people who are actual fans, and we've got a couple of callers who want to react to this, keeps growing more and more seismic. And I think COVID really kind of exacerbated it even more. But to the NHL, I mean, we were talking about this yesterday. The average NHL fan is a beer-drinking, 52-year-old, 25-pound overweight guy who likes physical violence, kind of, right? The NFL is a violent sport. They're not sitting around like worried about whether men can get pregnant. It's crazy to them. Yet this is what their league is doing and how tone deaf it's become. Mike in Florida, you're a big hockey fan?
Yes, but I have not watched in 3-4 years because of this kind of BS.
When did this start in hockey? I'm not that plugged in, admittedly. Is this something that's been a gradual progression? Like, when you hear this stuff, I think it sounds crazy because of the average hockey fan and how much. I remember, Buck, they had Kid Rock play at an All-Star game, and like the hockey media was furious that Kid Rock was playing, and I was like, Kid Rock's kind of the like baseline of the average hockey fan. Makes total sense. Yeah,
probably 3 to 4 years ago, hockey started changing. And, of course, then you go into rules and they start going towards high offense like everybody else. To me, it ruined the sport. But this kind of stuff here, to where they're pushing their agenda on you, and what people aren't really paying attention to, and what this all boils down to, is this is anti-hate speech laws that they are going to try to shove on Americans, okay? That's what this all boils down to. They're talking about it at the World Economic Forum right now as we sit here and try to have a normal conversation. They're talking about implementing anti-hate speech laws in America.
Yeah, it's the whole concept, Buck, as we have talked about, and I think this is part and parcel of it, words as violence. And so they're trying to restrict what words can be used under the guise that it's the equivalent of a physical act of violence.
Well, they want to be able to control what you say beyond just the deplatforming and the removal of your ability. They want to punish, right? That's the next step. It's one thing to say, I'll take away your Twitter account or I'll shadow ban you for saying something. But what the Democrat left and really the global elites, as you see, and COVID was a huge example of this, what they want is the ability to make you pay if you say the things that they don't like, right? To go beyond even just make it harder for you to say it or have your message be heard, to there's punishment attached to it. And that's why, you see, there are a lot of people on the left, there are a lot of Democrats who are of the mind that hate speech is not protected under the First Amendment. This is something they say all the time, to which you say, no, actually it is. It actually is. But they say, no, it's not.
And also, this begs the incredibly important question, how do you define hate speech? Which is insanely difficult to do in a intelligent manner.